House of Traditional Leaders, civil society and community-based organizations at large, we'd like to welcome you very warmly to the second day of our summit. In the spirit of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and that of the Provincial Plan on Gender-Based Violence, we have a panel or co-chairs this morning, one from the state, MEC Fanta over here, and myself from CS, from civil society organizations. We'll be sharing the program direction today. Can I first ask the heads of district delegations to stand up, to go to the back of the room, because you have to meet Mrs. Sokutu. The heads of delegations from the districts and the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro to join Mrs. Sokutu at the back of the room, please. Heads of delegations, she needs to see you very urgently. Thank you. So before I provide feedback on yesterday, we had one presentation which needed clarification, and that was from the South African Police Services. So I'm asking them now to come forward and to make that presentation, but to keep it crisp and short and to focus very clearly on the provincial statistics related to gender-based violence and femicide in the Eastern Cape. South African Police Services, I'm not sure who's going to make this presentation, plus please do come forward. Thank you.
Greetings to the Honorable Premier, all MECs that are present, all heads of departments, all delegates that are part of this summit. Good morning to everyone. I am Lieutenant General Mene. I am the Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Service in the Eastern Cape Province. Before Premier, I go to my presentation because it will be very short. But I just want to explain something that perhaps needs an explanation. We need to admit that there was a glitch in terms of communication for us not to be here yesterday, but we've ironed out issues with Mrs. Sokutu, and moving forward, we know now what went wrong yesterday. But we want to continue with the presentation. Premier, not forming part of my presentation is a quick summary of our commitment as a SAPS towards gender-based violence. Oh, okay. This one? Oh, okay, thank you. I just want to highlight quickly the commitment of our police in terms of gender-based violence. We have a constitutional mandate to police all inhabitants of South Africa. We therefore have a responsibility to take care of our inhabitants that are within the province of the Eastern Cape. Now, gender-based violence is one of the issues that we have to police. It is not a favor that we're doing to our community. It is a must that we need to attend to gender-based violence. Now, if you look at the province, there's a lot of atrocities that have been reported within the province. The worst one was the one where the body of the female was dismembered. There's a lot that is happening, Premier, and it is a big concern for us. It went as far as the grandfathers that are raping their own kids. We had a case last month of a grandfather who raped 4 of the grandchildren. So those are the issues that we are faced with, but we are committed as the SAPS. We have complied as the province with the gender-based violence desk project, whereby each and every station has to have the gender-based violence desk. Where there is no desk, and it's still a debate in terms of saying, shouldn't we keep it knowing in the CAC that there is a responsible person, instead of having a label that says gender-based violence, so that the victim doesn't feel secondary victimization by the fact that there's a label in the CSC. But in all stations, we're expected to have someone on the shifts that is trained in gender-based violence. The second part is that all stations are supposed to have victim-friendly rooms. Now, as we all know, we adopted buildings from the former or the previous regime. Not all police stations in the province are the same. We have buildings that do not conform to the standard of serving the communities. But then, in the absence of the victim-friendly room, when there is a space, we tend to put a structure that serves as a victim-friendly room. In the absence of the space then, if you are challenged of a space, we then have a dedicated room that is dedicated for the victims of gender-based violence, where this person is supposed to be taken to and interviewed in privacy. So that's basically something I wanted to highlight quickly. I've been requested, Premier, to be short, and I need to be short in presenting. The first slide depicts the crime categories, the serious crimes that we've highlighted. Murder, we highlighted murder, attempted murder, and assault GBH. The first column, it shows the crime category. We showed April to June, 2021 to 2022 financial year. And then next followed by April to June, 2022, 2023. So we made a comparison. If you look at the murder cases against women, which are on your left, we had 105 murders in 2021-22 financial year. But this year, for the first quarter, we had 142 murder cases. In other words, there is an increase. Hence, you see the color code of red showing 35.2%. It shows the increase of the difference of murder cases. It is 37 more cases. And then the second column, it is the third from your left, it is the attempted murders. In the previous year, we had 86. This year, we had 106, and having an increase of 20 more cases, amounting to 23.3%. The next column shows assault GBH. Assault GBH is where umuntu onzakalisiwe khona ehlatyiwe apho engaqhwatywanga khona, because the difference between common and GBH is that there's a grievous bodily harm that has been caused by the assault. So we had 1,129 cases against women in 2021-2022 financial year, and this year we had 2,090. There's a difference of 961 cases, which is a great concern, because the cases are just increasing. The positive part is that when we have awareness campaigns, we encourage women to break the silence and not to keep quiet in terms of gender-based violence. So the increase, although it is a concern, but we are glad that women are talking, women are reporting. The next column, it shows the cases against children. In the previous year, we had 23 cases, 21-22 financial year. This year, we had 38 cases, and we had an increase of 15 cases, which amounts to 65.2%, which is a great concern, because those are lives that have been lost. The attempted murders, we had 16 in 2021-22, 25 in 2022-23, an increase of 9 cases, which amounts to 56.3%. The assault GBH cases, there was 153 cases in 2021-22, 229 in 22-23, which is this year, first quarter, difference of 76 cases, amounting to 49.7%. The next slide. In this slide, Premier, we thought let's show the districts, the contribution of the different districts towards cases against women and children. And Nelson Mandela contributed 17.3%, followed with Buffalo City, 16.8%, or Tambo, 15.4%, Amatolo, 13.1%, Chris Hani, 12.4%, Sarah Bartman, 11.9%, Alfred Nzo, 7.4%, and Joe Gabi, 5.7% contribution. The next slide, Premier, shows the top 30 stations. We went as far as showing which are the stations that are contributing most towards cases against women and children. No, the first one is only women. This one, slide number 4. The first station is Mthatha in OR Tambo. Mdantsane is the second one. Lusikisiki is the third one. Fourth one is East London. 5, KwaZakhele and Nelson Mandela. Libode, Krisani, and Ngungisi. Bethelsdorp and Nelson Mandela. Gelvendale, Kwanobuhle, and Ngeleni OR Tambo. I'm going to stick to the top 15, perhaps Grimstown, Dujwa, New Brighton, and Woma. The rest are reflected on the slide. I'm not going to read everything, Premier, due to the time constraints. Those are the top stations on cases against women. The next slide shows the top contributing station, top 30 in the province, in terms of cases against children. And the top one, it is Kerkut in Sarah Partman. Lusikisiki is number 2, East London. Mbizana, Mthatha, Ngeleni, Mdantsane, Kamesh, Bethelsdorp, Gelvendale, Libode, Mount Frey, Lungisi, and Butterworth at number 15. The rest is shown on the slide, the whole top 30. In this slide, Premier, we did an analysis. We requested to Brigadier Moodley to tell us when are these cases taking place. And according to the crime register, the crimes against women and children occurs mainly over weekends. And if you know that when it comes to alcohol and drugs, we feel that the Saturday and Sundays might also indicate that alcohol plays a role in terms of cases against women and children. The second one, bullet shows that most crimes against women occurs over weekends between 1800 hours and 23:59 midnight, whilst most crimes against children occurs earlier on weekends between 1500 hours and 20:59. In this slide, Premier, we're trying to show the top 5 places of occurrence in terms of cases. And the total on top shows that most of the victims, the cases happen in the residences of the perpetrators or either the residence of the victim or at a friend's place. But we had 1,073 cases that are reported inside residence. Public space, 413, and liquor outlets, chibins and taverns, nightclubs, 207. Business premises shows 21, and educational institutions, schools, universities and colleges show 15. The top 5 places of occurrence that we had, those are the women and children. I think this one is, we went in terms of saying residence of perpetrator, 645. It is the same as the previous one, but the breakdown, Brigadier Moodley went as far as showing agricultural, land, farm, and mode of transport, and the educational institutions also is 22. I don't know why he has the different stats, but I'll follow up with him with this slide. The instruments used, the body parts, it's 391. Remember, when it comes to rape also, we refer to it as body parts and fist, or it's 391. Knives, 288. Firearms, 229. Stick, 202. Bricks or stick, 100. The top 5 offender to victim relationship. In all these cases, we checked and looked at acquaintance where a person knows the victim or knows the perpetrator. It's 500 cases. Boyfriends, it's 371. Family members, it's 100 cases. Husband or life partner, 99. Ex-boyfriends, 89 cases. I don't want to repeat the slide because it's the same. The next slide, slide number 12, We showed here, Premier, all the domestic violence related cases, all of it now. And we went as far giving total according to district. And Alfred Nzo is at number 8, Amatole at number 6, Buffalo City at number 2, Chris Ane at number 5, Joe Gabe at number 7, as far as sequence is concerned. Nelson Mandela Bay is on top here, but these is in a sequence of the alphabet. But Or Tambo at number 3, Sarah Bartman at number 4. And we gave totals also because males and females are both victims of gender-based violence. So we gave a totals of how many females reported these cases and how many males became victims of gender-based violence. That is the end of the presentation. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Mene, for the presentation, which I think has clarified some of the questions we had yesterday. What I like about that presentation is that there's quite a lot of detail. And obviously, South African Police Services has a very good monitoring system so that they can give us very good information on what's happening around gender-based violence, reported crimes in the province. We must always remember the caveat that it's reported crimes because so many crimes in our province go unreported. I'd like to give a short feedback on the presentations and inputs yesterday. I'm going to keep it very short because we'd like to give more time to the commissions. I think all of us want to hear what the discussions were in the commissions yesterday. We were welcomed yesterday by Deputy Mayor Faku, who spoke of the high levels of GBV in the metro and the concerns that the local government has about this. And today, in the presentation of South African Police Services, we see that Buffalo City Municipality comes up very high when you look at issues of domestic violence, rape, and femicide in the province. So that it remains a concern. Our Premier then spoke about the state of GBV in the province, with several districts showing high levels of gender-based violence. Lusikisiki continues to be a concern for the entire country. Nelson Mandela Bay Metro and BCM have high levels of femicide, and both are on the national list as well as high up on the provincial list for gender-based violence and femicide hotspots. Our next presentation was by Ms. Mandisa Kanhile, who's part of the Presidential Coordinating Committee of the summit that will be held in November, but she's also a founder member of the Total Shutdown campaign. She mapped the history of the National Strategic Plan, starting with the Total Shutdown protests, which was undertaken nationally. The outcome of those protests was the first ever presidential summit held in November 2018, and that gave rise to a declaration on gender-based violence, which was signed off by the president in May 2019 during COVID. An interministerial committee was set up to develop, not an interministerial, an interim ministerial committee was set up to develop what is known now as the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence. This provincial summit, is both a follow-up of that process, but also preparation for the second presidential summit. I would like to mention here that the summit in 2018 was the first by a president of any country in the world. And that's quite a feat for South Africa. No president has ever called a summit on gender-based violence anywhere. South Africa did. So we're reminded by the theme of the summit, which is accountability, amplification, and acceleration now. We then had a presentation which has now been clarified by SAPS, and I think it's fresh this morning, so you have all the information. MEC Fanta gave input on the work of DSD and the province on the strategic responses to gender-based violence, and followed by a presentation by Mr. Machamba of DSD. And he provided data on numerous activities, strategies, and approaches which are being used in the province to address gender-based violence. Before this, I also gave the roadmap that was taken to develop the provincial plan on gender-based violence and femicide. So the presentation by Mr. Machamba indicated communities in rural areas are still struggling to access police stations easily because of lack of infrastructure, distance, and other challenges. The lack of resources, both for the departments and for civil society, remains a challenge. And then poor coordination on the provincial strategic plan remains one of the challenges. But there were several successes. One of the big successes that we had in the province was the pilot of the rapid response teams. It was a pilot, and it was amazing the results that were achieved by that very intense intersectional multisectoral approach. We then had a presentation by the Commission on Gender Equality on research they did on the process of developing the National Strategic Plan. They were following that process. Their findings were that while the Interim Steering Committee did produce the NSP, they said that the process was fraught with challenges and did not meet the requirement which the research said was part of the Interim Steering Committee. That was challenged because it was not part of the committee. So I think that, in summary, is what the discussions were yesterday. We want to keep this very short because what we really want to hear today was the voices of people who participated and who went into the commissions to talk about each of the pillars. We would like to get the feedback on those pillars now. And I hand over the management of that process to MEC Fanta. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie, and good morning to Premier, Mrs. President, mayors, our invited guests, our officials present here, our inkosi zezwe lakwethu bethuna, abefundisi bethu be-sector zonke. I greet you all in the wonderful name of Jesus. Molweni namhlanje. Nileleka ukuhlemosne. Ndicinga uba we have exhausted everything in our commissions. Thank you, Mama Leslie, for feedback yesterday. Even if nomuntu bengekho, he has catch up with what was happening. And we thank you, PC wethu. He has given clarity of what happened, and siyaxolela ngalampazamo yayizolo. Now is the time that we give to our commission to give you reports. Sizazibiza ngokulandelana kwazo. I hope are they all ready? Are they all ready? Mamsokupha i-reports the commissions. Okay. Follow. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Abanye ndiyabonakala bakhona basagqibezela. Sifuna u2 and 4 ke ngoku to give us i-report. What we are going to appeal, okay, when we are giving a chance to a plenary, siyacela sicinga exhaustiwe izinto ezininzi, the ideas and everything we commissions. So we are not going to allow apha ngoku abantu abazawuvusa izinto bezifamba sizithethe phaa kwi-commissions. Apha nje commissions kukunika i-report if there is a question of clarity and some little additions, but asizovula i-platform yoba kuqala i-commission, and I'm going to be very strict on that one. Over to you, Farida. HODs, mayors, and distinguished guests, all protocol observed. We are presenting the feedback for the Commission 2 and 4. So I will start. I want to thank at the beginning our two facilitators, who also happen to be on the stage at the moment, Honorable Fanta, the MEC for Social Development, and Dr. Foster, who capably facilitated the sessions. I also want to thank all the participants in our commissions. It was not easy because Pillar 2 and 4 are quite comprehensive pillars, but we had to make do with the time that we had. Pillar 2 and 4 concentrate on, Pillar 2 is prevention and rebuilding the social cohesion, and Pillar 4 is response, care, support, and healing. Now, at the outset, I want to indicate this is a provincial summit. So as a result, even though there were inputs that came from individual districts and there were inputs that came from organizations, what we have done in consolidating the report today is to ensure that we look at successes and achievements, all of the areas on a provincial level and how they would apply. In terms of successes, there have been awareness campaigns which have been successful, and these have been conducted at community level. There have been involvement in some areas of departments to focus on upskilling and training of unemployed youth. GBV prevention programs have been established at institutions of higher learning using an intersectional approach and focusing on mental health issues. And we want to commend some of the institutions of higher learning, for example, the University of Fort Hare, which has now established a gender unit and is doing some fantastic work. There is social change work in schools with the provision of psychosocial support. Partnerships have been established with critical stakeholders, such as the House of Traditional Leaders, SAPS, DISRAC, DSD, and with CSOs. There has been a developed social cohesion strategy and a provincial social cohesion forum, but that also needs to cascade to districts. We have conducted dialogues with taxi drivers to quell unrest in the province. There has been excellent work with toy libraries. We have had men's program initiatives. There has also been an establishment of boys' assemblies in schools, which focuses on education, on GBV and circumcision. This has been a provincial initiative which needs to cascade to districts. And then we've had the establishment of the Women's Equelo Network, which is the WIN network. It comprises of 101 women's organizations in all districts and the 2 metros. We need to always applaud our successes as a province. What do we need to do differently? How and when? There is a lack of integration and coordination in the response mechanism to GBVF. For example, you have national departments, you have provincial departments who all descend at the same time on the same area for national days or 16 days of activism. We also need to move from awareness raising and commemorative days to programs that are sustainable. We need to focus on food security by focusing on the child. We need to focus on early childhood development. We need to also have the integrated psychosocial support programs that we had during COVID-19 resuscitated. Awareness raising programs need to include the affected people on the ground who own the program, and they be given a platform to articulate their challenges and experiences. We need to address the contradiction in terms of legislation adopted by various departments. For example, we have the Restorative Justice Bill. The emphasis is on parole for perpetrators of sexual violence. What is clear is legislators need to be clear on the laws they approve, because when there is contradiction in law, there becomes a challenge when it comes to implementation. Intergovernmental relations also has a huge gap. The CSOs and private sector is omitted, and this has to be addressed immediately. When we work in the Eastern Cape, there are certain things we need to take into consideration. We need to look at unemployment. We need to look at single-headed households and poverty. So what we need is an intersectional and multisectoral approach to gender-based violence and femicide. What needs to be accelerated? The Department of Public Works needs to conduct an audit of available government buildings which could be used for shelters, as shelters for victims or survivors of GBVF immediately if the National Department of Public Works report is not available for the province. We need to access the Criminal Assets Recovery Fund, which can be used to fight against gender-based violence. Research institutions need to share their research and provide root causes on the reasons why women are being killed. We need to assess the functionality of the RRT model in districts. How many have fully functioning RRTs? There is definitely a disconnect between the ward and district level. We need to incorporate the moral regeneration movement into the syllabus of the Department of Education. There also needs to be collaboration between the Department of Health and the Department of Education and other key stakeholders, including the private sector, to employ unemployed social workers and psychologists. The parole board needs to be engaged to look at the issue of GBVF seriously. We especially said this as a group because the perpetrators are released and they then commit the crimes again. And sometimes the victim or survivor is not aware that that perpetrator has been released on parole. There needs to be a review of DSD's funding model of organizations and the oversight role to ensure work is being done. Are they DSD evaluating these programs? Because from our understanding, they fund the programs who have been funded before. And in some instances, there's no work really taking place out there, but the funding continues. So that evaluation and monitoring needs to happen. We urgently need to finalize the legislation on victim support services. This legislation is long outstanding, Honorable Premier, and it needs to be finalized. What needs to be amplified? The family-based model, which was introduced by DSD, needs to be revived and have clear guidelines, a budget, and monitoring systems. This model focused on broken families in the province, and it is a good model which needs to be revived. Given the increase in substance abuse in the province, Honorable Premier, there must be more drug rehabilitation centers established. We're linking this back to the fact that there needs to be that audit of our government buildings. We could convert some of those buildings into drug rehabilitation centers. There is only one in Nelson Mandela Metro, which is the Ernest Malchus Center. But the need in this province is far greater than just one rehabilitation center. All of GBV issues that we have are substance abuse related. So that is a dire need for this province. Government departments, GBVF needs to be a standing item in the war rooms, and each department and municipality needs to account on what they are doing in those war rooms. The war rooms need to recognize the hotspots based on the stats we receive from SAPS and from the CSOs, because we have sometimes stats that are the reported cases. Some of them are unreported to SAPS, but we are aware of cases. The epicenter of GBV needs to be identified, and we need to see how to intervene. And these interventions need to be integrated, monitored, and reported on. Government departments need to integrate HIV and AIDS programs and ensure intersectionality. Our programs need to focus on positive masculinities. We need to focus on how to work with girl children, especially girls in rural communities. We need a greater involvement of the House of Traditional Leaders and the religious fraternity in addressing GBVF. We also proposed in the group a bottom-up approach in dealing with GBVF. GBV should be a subject in life orientation to enrich the school program. We spoke about compulsory sport participation, which should be reintroduced at schools by the Department of Education, Honorable MEC for Education. We also looked at peer education outside the school environment, which needs to be emphasized. And Honorable Premier, we are saying we need to ask the corporate sector and the business chambers to submit concrete plans on their contribution towards the eradication of GBVF in this province. Those plans can come out of their corporate social responsibility budgets. What do we mean by the concept of accountability? We struggled as a group to talk about this and to come with a succinct response, but what we asked were some questions which were left unanswered. And these are: how are the Tutuzela care centers working? And who is accountable for this? Now, the challenge we have, Honorable Premier, the National Prosecuting Authority has set legislation in terms of the Tutuzela care centers, but the legislation is not very clear on the roles and responsibilities of the various role players. We have the NPA, we have the Department of Social Development, the Department of Health, and the South African Police Services. But if you look at the real state of our Tutuzela care centers, some of them are crumbling in terms of the services. And then one of the challenges we have with the Department of Health is the recognition of the forensic nurses. Their qualifications are not recognized by the council. And we have been crying for this to be recognized for a long time. But that challenge is affecting the efficacy of the Tutuzela care centers because we are losing forensic nurses who are more critical there than some of the doctors. Victim unit centers have been established in SAPS, but there are women who are raped in police stations. So we asked ourselves, and we said the relevant person at SAPS should be held accountable. If it's the station commander, that person must be held accountable because that is the person responsible. There should be, in terms of the model, psychologists and social workers at police stations. So who is accountable for the lack of victim-friendly rooms? There are some victim-friendly rooms whose station commanders have turned into storerooms because staff are sleeping on duty. Now that is something where we need consequence management. The report post-COVID-19 was there are 23,000 teenage pregnancies in this country. Of those, 999 were girls of the ages 10 to 14 years. And there have been approximately 1,300 newly HIV-infected adolescent girls and young women in South Africa per week. We need to look at the issues of inequality. There have been no arrests made for statutory rape, and we need to ask ourselves why. Why are perpetrators getting away with this? When discussing accountability, we need to reflect on the lived realities of women and girls in the province. We also need to look at who becomes accountable for the rape victims. Released perpetrators threaten their victims or survivors, and they in turn withdraw cases. Parents and communities also need to take accountability for GBV because it takes a village to raise a child. We need to remind the House of the South African Constitution that says the state has an obligation to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of all women. How then does the state fulfill its obligation? Accountability is equal to responsibility. Lastly, Honorable Premier and Honorable members and members of the House, we have said action now.
we were saying a replication of the national model is required to address GBVF in the province. The Premier needs to establish an MEC forum on GBVF where MECs report on a monthly basis on GBVF and the departmental progress on their plans, their budgets, and civil society needs to be part of this forum. You need to establish an HOD forum where HODs report monthly on how they address GBVF in their plans and spend the budgets. We need to include addressing GBV in the KPAs of all politicians, heads of department, and municipal managers. The challenge we were talking about in the committee was that municipal managers and mayors are not taking GBVF seriously within districts. HODs need to account on the 8-point plan on a quarterly basis, and not only during August month or during 16 days of activism and public service week. We need to strengthen areas in government, ensure there are budgets for GBV programs, revive the IDP forums where all stakeholders, including NGOs, account on GBVF. The inclusion of traditional leaders and religious leaders play an important part in moral regeneration. The social needs cluster at district level needs to be revived when it comes to Premier's IGR forums. The mayors can then provide an informed report. Training, Honorable Premier, is very critical of government officials on relevant government GBV legislation, especially the 3 GBV amendment bills, because of its impact and responsibilities and consequences if they fail. And lastly, we need to have a civil society summit for the province in order to discuss the challenges around funding and coordination of CSOs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamu Farida. We're just going to take questions, strictly questions, if there are any. If there's none, sigqithe. Strictly only 5 questions. Any hands? 1. This is 1. Ukhona kule aisle? Manjisho. I'm sorry for comments. We need just question. 1. Ikhona kwenye aisle? Ikhona kwenye question? Engathi ayikho. Over to you, Mama. Over to you. The question?
RRT. I heard the Honorable Speaker mentioning that there is an involvement that I'm not sure whether it's going to be starting or it's already implemented, whereby the Fort Hare University is getting involved in the GBH, V and F. So I would like if maybe we can have that information, the outline of that information in terms of are they going to be providing any trainings? If there is trainings on the line, how do we access that so that we can take it back to our own entities? Thank you.
Thank you. Then Commission 3 and 5, akhawuleze anyuke. Zawunikezela yena. Are you answering, Mama Farida, about the question?
I will request Rihanna Olofsson, she's there from University of Fort Hare at the back. She can respond on the University of Fort Hare. They have a GBV unit and she can talk to that response. Thank you.
Are you ready?
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Rihanna Olofsson. I'm from the University of Fort Hare. So the university has established a gender-based violence prevention unit. We are going to be offering training, and if you are interested in accessing this training, please do contact me. We do not have the details of what this training is going to look like yet. This is quite a new unit still, but please do contact me. Come and get my contact details, and we will stay in touch. And we will also make sure that we advertise widely. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Greetings to the Honorable Premier, the Honorable MECs, all the delegates of the conference, of the summit, and all the colleagues. The name is Amikaya Ngonzo. I will be sharing the discussions that were undertaken for Pillar 3 and Pillar 5. Okay. Okay, so this is now basically the background to the pillar. It's quite a lengthy narrative. I will not go through it. I will just skip so that I can quickly get to zoom into the discussions of the commission. But just to mention that not everything has been put onto this PowerPoint. The detail of the submissions made is sitting in the Word document that has been prepared for consolidation into the overall report, the one that will form part of the submission in preparation for the National Summit. So the first question that we had to grapple with in as far as the discussions are concerned was what needs to be done, and in as far as the current status quo. So there was a very active participation and engagement of all the participants in as far as the challenges that are being faced by our province in as far as GBF, GBV, and F is concerned. But what came out very prominently was a need for an interdepartmental approach or collaboration towards GBV. The feeling of the participants in the commission was that there was the fight of government in particular towards GBV is a bit haphazard. So the current collaborations which are there are not to the desired level. So the feeling is that there should be a collaborative effort in as far as that is concerned. And also in as far as the management of the actual cases are concerned, the commission felt that there needs to be some amends done in the justice system so that it is designed in priority or to safeguard the victim, because the feeling currently is that it seems to be protecting more the rights of the perpetrators. And then also the issue of the release of the perpetrators. The commission feels that this is a very problematic issue that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency, because it tends to compromise the safety of the victims on the ground. Now, more on what needs to be done. There was a feeling in the commission that our courts are currently very congested, and that the judiciary should then build facilities that will focus on GB, V, and F, and have dedicated magistrates and prosecutors. So the next thing is that the Department of Health should have forensic nurses, because the feeling of the commission is that this will enhance the process of collecting evidence so that the prosecution process could be fast-tracked. Because one of the issues that was raised was that the long period of time that the court cases take is frustrating to the people on the ground. Now, there was also an input made that there needs to be an inclusion, an active inclusion and involvement of the perpetrators into the solutions development process for GBVF, especially considering the issue of the rehabilitated perpetrators. So there was a very strong feeling that those need to be part of the broader dialogue in the fight against GBVNF. Now, there was also a very strong input about the capacity of the police in terms of managing the cases, and a need was raised to have that, to have the capacity of the police enhanced. Also, the Commission felt that government needs to be rather more proactive in its approach, rather than being more reactive, which is the current feeling of the Commission members. Now, in as far as the psychosocial support, the lament that was made by the Commission was that after incidents of rape take place, there is a huge flocking of social workers, for example, into the homes of the victims. And the sentiment of the Commission is that that tends to only happen once. So there is no consistent provision of psychosocial support to the victims. It's just a hit and run kind of thing, and then the burden now to continue providing that support to the victims remains with other players, but the department does not consistently provide that support, which is greatly needed. Now, the issue that was also raised was the issue of the parole. The Commission felt that the issue of the parole should be considered because in some cases, release of perpetrators through parole is very frustrating to the survivors, because in some cases it disturbs them when they are still in the recovery process. There is also an issue of the community empowerment programs that have to be enhanced, because the feeling is that some actions of the community members may border onto criminal activities and also demonstrate a big deficiency in terms of understanding of the law. Now, there was an issue raised about social media, and the input of the Commission is that with the exercise of the freedom of speech and expression through the social media platforms, there sometimes is a perpetration of crimes. So the resolution, or the proposal being made by the Commission is that the use of social media platforms has to be legislated. People have to be accountable for the things they say, because they tend to perpetuate hate crimes. Now, there was also an issue about the trading hours of the outlets. So the proposal is that let Liquor Board revisit the trading times so that people who are non-users of those facilities are not compromised in the process. And also, to also comfort and put at ease the victims, there was a feeling that a great sense of customer-orientated service needs to be exercised at the front line points where services are being offered. In other words, where the crimes are being reported, there needs to be a greater sense of accommodation towards the person who has been violated. Police should also be empowered to arrest perpetrators, even if the perpetrators seem to be enjoying the protection of the very people that they violated. So an example cited here was when a crime has been reported of, for example, a husband abusing their wife, and when police come, the the very wife now is saying that no, the husband cannot be arrested. Yet the evidence is visible that this person has been wounded by the very person they are protecting. So the feeling is that the law has to be given a bit more power to exercise its right in protecting the very same person who is trying to protect the perpetrator. Yet they are the victim of the very same person. There was also a very strong discussion about the learnings, or rather the success stories that were gained from the fight against HIV and AIDS. Understanding that that fight is not over, but there was a very strong submission in the commission that there were people who were on the ground actively involved in the fight against HIV and AIDS. And the submission of the commission, therefore, is that there should be ground diggers or volunteers or whatever term they could be given, but people that will be on the ground actively involved, following up cases and picking up potential cases of GBV and making sure that some action is taken in as far as those are concerned. I am still just going to finish up with the other issue that was raised by the commission was that there is a problematic absence of justice on the ground. Now, the submission therefore is that the MPA is to have traditional courts or participate in traditional courts, and this has to be made a very strong recommendation for consideration by the NPA. Another submission is that mobile police stations should be put in place. Again, the issue of the intersectoral collaboration in the fight against GBV and F. I am trying to fast track. There was also an issue about the underage offenders. The feeling of the commission was that there was too much lenience in the management of those cases, and the submission is therefore that let those be managed rather more seriously, because those tend to commit equally dangerous crimes in society. The issue of the police visibility and patrol has to be improved, and also the Tutuzela centers have to be more resourced. Trying to move a bit faster. Now, on things that are needed to be amplified are things like the CPF, and also to ensure that they get capacitated so that they assist greatly in terms of covering the gaps in the system. Now, I will skip the other bullets and I will try. Okay, there was a very strong argument that the major issue begins with the family. So the submission, therefore, is that based on the report that was done by Dr. Machemba, where he reflected on some of the work being done by MRM and other structures towards the restoration of the social fiber in society, the discussion and the submission of the commission is that there needs to be a restoration of the values at the family level as the fundamental building block of society. So those have to be seriously amplified. Yeah, I'll just move on to the next one. So there was an argument about the cultural stereotypes and dynamics about, for example, married women who take or who endure abuse in light of ukunyamezela. So the submission was that women have to be empowered so that they're able to break free from abuse, even within the context of their marriages, for their own lives and for the greater good of society. Now, there was a submission here that some of the perpetuating factors are the the outlets which are operating in our respective spaces, and that society tends not to be aware of seriously dangerous things that are taking place in their very backyard. And regular searches were proposed at the shops of the foreign, or at the shops of the foreign nationals that are operating in our society, because the suspicion or the experience has taught that some of the things that are being sold in those spaces or in those shops are not necessarily what is being displayed in the shelves. So police involvement, working with community and civil society partners, is required to conduct those raids. There was a submission that some of the programs, for example, the MRM, are at a bit of a high level, and that they need to be taken down to the level of the ward, because that is where the damage is. The issue of the state committees was also amplified, that it has to be strengthened, and then I will skip the other issues about the capacitation of the police and so on. The people that are conducting court monitoring should be assisted. The community should play a role in the process. Victims should be empowered to face their offenders, and this talks to the earlier issue that was raised, that sometimes when the people get parole, the victims are not ready to actually face those people. So the process of preparing the victims to face the offenders has to be done, and also during the period of the trials themselves, before even the sentencing and the convictions are done, people have to be empowered to ensure that they face their offenders. Now, there was an advice from SAPS that was made that there's an app that should be used, because there was a lament that the issue of the police negligence in the management of mainly the GBV and F cases was a problem. So the My SAPS app was then advised as something that society broadly should use, and stakeholders that are part of the summit should ensure that they sell the idea even on the ground, to ensure that people are empowered to use the app, and that the element of being anonymous is there. People don't have to disclose their identity for fear of victimization. All right, let me just skip these so that I draw towards the closure. Just before I get to that slide. Okay, yeah, just this one. It's the one of strengthening accountability. The submission was that as part of the capacitation of the machinery of the state in the fight against GBV, SAPS needs to be trained, particularly in terms of Domestic Violence Act. And that in as far as ensuring that there is proper customer service and respect of the people, regardless of their social status, a proposal was made that let there be questionnaires being filled by all the people, by both the person reporting the crime and as well as the officer concerned, and then the person should be able to give a report in terms of how they have experienced the person on the other side of the counter, on how they serviced them. Now, there was a submission also, I think the last one, that there should be district sessions of the summit. In other words, now that this is a provincial summit, the submission is that for a more refined discussion and for more practical and implementable actions, there is a proposal to have these kinds of sessions at the district level. Lastly, there has to be, or rather a proposal for a gender-based violence council at the level of the Office of the Premier, and an example was given of the AIDS Council and the success that it has had in as far as coordinating all the efforts that are meant to fight against HIV are concerned. So that model is now being proposed in as far as GBV is concerned. Thank you very much. Thanks, MC. Now, Pillar 5 will be quicker. Now, it focuses, briefly, Jay, it focuses on the economic empowerment of women. Now, various ideas were raised here in as far as how women could be empowered, because the feeling of the commission is that part of the victimization and the suffering that women go through in the hands of perpetrators is caused by their economic disempowerment or their social status or economic status, as it were. So various ideas were proposed. Now, one of them was the most practical and basic things that people could do in their respective spaces, in villages, in townships, that of exploring their environments and the opportunities around them. Examples were given about natural talents like painting, dancing, singing. There was a beautiful example given by one of the delegates of a beauty contest that was conducted in a village, where households within the area contributed 20 rands per household to try and put together a small village fund so that that activity could be conducted, and also prize could be then given to the winners. Such things were proved to be constructive things that will continue to keep people occupied, and progressive things that will take young people forward, especially the girl child. Now, I think that example summarizes the whole slide. Let me just move on to the next one. The other issue was that there is a strong need to have women enabled to access the transport market, and also that there is a potential business sitting with everybody that is utilizing their own homes for business purposes. Examples were given about, for example, renting out some of the rooms that are not being used, and so on and so on. Another submission that was made was that the cooperatives should be revived, because they did assist a great deal in as far as enhancing the economic status of women. The issue of the youth development structures was put forward strongly as a very solid recommendation that is made by the Commission, that part of the proactive means of addressing GBV and F and the issue of the disempowerment of women should begin with the empowering of young people. Now, the government SPU the Commission feels that it should be more involved and that it should be more active even at municipal level. Now, one other issue that was raised as a downfall, or rather as a disadvantage in as far as women is concerned, is the issue of the lack of skills. And a proposal is hereby being made that there should be a very strong skills drive for women, and then there should be mentorship programs to guide them, especially the girl child and unemployed women, to run their own businesses. Now, there was also a feeling that the currently existing TVET colleges could be enhanced further to cater for skills that are needed, practical skills that are needed by people who may not necessarily academically qualify to access those facilities or those institutions. Okay, I'm sorry, that may be a bit small in terms of font, but the motivation that the Commission gave here was that the empowerment of women economically is a strategic thing to do because they've already got the capacity and the abilities to run and manage households. So it is something that is that could be very beneficial in the broader fight against GBV and F to have women empowered economically. Women's Forum are hereby proposed to be strengthened, and the Women in Agriculture and Rural Development needs to be revised, and then private and public to assist in gender-based violence activist funding on campaigns that are being undertaken on the ground. Because from the inputs made in the Commission, there was a lot of work being done by NPOs and NGOs and individual activists towards the fight against GBV, and a strong call for the funding of those constructive activities was therefore made. Now, more and more ideas were thrown onto the works. Those are practical and easy to access kinds of ideas, instead of looking for things that are not even practical or feasible in as far as business is concerned. An argument was made about the beauty of our province and what it offers, so especially those communities that reside, or those women that reside in rural areas with the advantage of natural beauty. Things like hiking were proposed, which could potentially have spin-offs of providing jobs for tour guides and even restaurants when the need has grown. And the issue of booklets at info boxes or at municipal spaces was also suggested. Okay, all right. So moving quicker now towards the end, the Commission feels like government should prioritize youth in communities for job opportunities, because part of what was discussed as the potential causes of, or rather as the major causes of GBV, was young people who have nothing to do. No job, no tertiary or high school, and no activity. So the feeling was that let's get young people occupied by constructive and progressive activities like businesses and job opportunities. Of course, the corresponding issue that then arises from that is the issue of the skills, which I think we've mentioned. And also there was a feeling that the opportunities like learnerships and so on are not as fairly distributed as desired. The feeling was that at the most remote areas, there is no equal access to information in comparative terms with the urban and more urban areas where information is rather more available. Yeah, okay. So the potential industries that could assist, or sectors of the economy that could assist women, especially considering the profile of our province, is agriculture and tourism. But people are encouraged to think more, to look more in those sectors and see what potential opportunities could come out of those. And there was also a strong view that one of the things that are haunting the province, and in fact the country, is the issue of food security. So that remains a very good business opportunity to begin with, because food security is an issue. There was also an idea about using natural resources, like we mentioned earlier, like clay. Many products can come out of clay, and also trees around us. Those are very affordable and accessible resources or raw materials that could be used towards. Now, there was a submission that the 30% SMMEs should be considered for an increase. Following that, the feeling is that women should be trained to also be active participants in the sector of construction. And I will skip the others, but there was also a very strong cry to say that all these activities, all these efforts could be made, but there still needs to be a very strong effort to empower the boy child. Because the boy child that is neglected today is a potential perpetrator of tomorrow. Now, there were submissions made even by delegates from higher institutions that there is neglect, and there's neglect of the struggles that women or young girls that are at tertiary institutions are going through, and their need for financial assistance. And the fact that the supply that government has, or the provision of NSFAS, doesn't always come when it is required. So that then forces undesired actions being taken by young women, and then we begin to witness those blessee situations. And that's one of the causes of GBV, of course. There was a strong, of course, submission that government is doing a lot of work, but there needs to be a very strong follow-up on the work that's being done. The resources that are being invested in various sectors must be followed up. There must be a very strong monitoring mechanism to ensure that the resources are being managed sufficiently. There was also an idea that, towards this very theme of economic empowerment of women, that there are many buildings which are currently not used that could be used or repurposed for some other business entities run by women. An example was given about the schools which have been rationalized. And thankfully there were some responses, I think, from the HOD, from Public Works, about a process to ensure that those schools get repurposed for the greater good of society. The other issue about the intergovernmental collaborations, even in the context of economic empowerment, and there was also, this is now the last slide, there's a need for labor to train unemployed graduates, because another issue was raised here of seriously high numbers of young people who are graduates but are sitting at communities having nothing to do. I will not go into the other one. There was also a big issue about access to land for access to land, especially for women in the urban areas, because they don't have the same luxury, so to speak, compared to women in the rural areas who've got access to land. Yeah, so there was a very strong submission that there must be a collective effort to ensure that women are empowered, that the environment is made to be conducive for them to be active in terms of business. There was also a suggestion which was very strong, that there must be business advice centers in rural areas, because there's something that women in rural areas are doing. That's what the commission was discussing. Things like producing beads and traditional regalia and attire and all those things, but there was also a corresponding disagreement to the feasibility or the businessability of that business, that the demand is not necessarily that high for those things. So women need to be guided on how to go into profitable and businesses with high potential so that indeed they are economically emancipated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Any questions for clarity? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not more. Those are questions. For comments, can't be business. Qale apha one. Ndiqale apha kumama kulo. Te 1. That 2 ngaphandle uphakamisa. Ngoku ngi-5 for questions. Then I want 3 for comments. Okay. Okay. For comments ke ngoku. Ndifuna isandla. 1, 2. Ikhona ngaphi comments? Uphi yakho? Noma kumama ophakamileyo ngowesithathu. Ukho question wena. Okay. 3 apha, 3 ngapha. Masiye ku questions ke ngoku. 1 mama what question?
Molweni, igama lam ndinguNosintu kaMcimeli eNgqamakhwe, kwilali ekuthiwa yiXilinga. I am the founder of the Abanebongo Persons with Disabilities, registered at the DSD. It's a registered NPO for people living with disabilities in the dusty rural villages. I was actually devastated when one of the presenters actually said that and admitted that the issue of the perpetrator being released without the victim being let known. I'm sorry, my English, but I'll try my best. He even said it's being a problem. I was like, yo, but ndicinga ukuba mna
Question, ne?
it's a question. Eyona question endinayo ngoku ithi, why don't the relevant government
Thetha.
Okay. Kutheni lento ngoku ngalo umzuzu kutheni lento kungabikho noba bemnye ozozikhomitha azivolunteer athi kwezi ideas bezithethwa apha ukuba maku empower NPOs kusupportwe NPOs ekuhlaleni ngoba zizo ezisebenzayo ezipha. Ndicela mna kutheni lento kungabikho ngoku government department is committed ngoku ithi sifuna uqalisa ngoku ukwehla sibheke ezilalini ngoku siyoncedisa kweza
Thank you.
NPOs.
Uthu, question, Uthu, ndiyagqitha ke ngoku. Akazazi Uthu ngoku. Is that mom again?
Working for Masmanyan. Question yam is Parku Justice. Kuko Act Protection Order that is having also a harassment order. The problem of me is because the parties, they are given application to apply, where there must be a application and also the defendant. Because we cannot apply both. There will be no defending the case. And yenza lanto ngoku omama kwinto yobana mabakhutshwe ezindlini ngenxa ba as applicants zoyi-2 zizawushiyana ngoku-evaluatwa. So the question is, why then sends the application with case A1, not beko defendant?
Okay. U3? 3. Tata sondela masha ngahanda ukubona. Sondela phambili. Nanku 3 uzaba ngu4 ogqibela u5.
Thank you so much, Mphathiswa. Mna ndizoba mde. In fact, bendi confused between question and comment, no edisha on the one last aspect in terms of women empowerment. Tingu Councillor Africa Maxongo mna, portfolio councillors.
Several questions ke ngoku Africa.
Ewe, lendithi ke loku Mphathiswa di confused. Awunonika ndi edisha mna so that the aspect ingashiyeki kwi comments and your questions. That one of psychological empowerment, when that presenter dealt with women empowerment, because I feel strongly that we must be psychologically empowered to take yourself out of the pit before you can participate in economic opportunities. And I think that's very key, because one thing we must learn, and this is what the only thing I'm going to say in Mphathiswa Nhlale Phansi, is that you are a wife first, then you are a mother. But when you are a mother, your priorities must then change, so that your priority is the safety and the happiness of your children. So if you are psychologically empowered to leave a toxic relationship before it gets, in a state that will be yielding those gruesome, results that we've had throughout the 2 days. So my little input in the session is that psychologically, let's be empowered that priorities in the children. Remember, a crying mom or a depressed mom is a depressed, offspring. So we need to get a space where we will be empowered to live, empowered to fend for ourselves economically, so that we can provide a happy environment for our children. Thank you.
Yeah, mandithabathe elithuba ndibulise kumphathi osiphethelele nkqubo. Mna ndingumali Xolile from Jamestown, ndipha kwi-Eastern Cape White Door Center. Sinengxaki phaya kwi-community yethu xa sithabatha elithuba as an opportunity for our community. Ingxaki phaya i-court justice yethu ipakile i-cases stuck from kwi-COVID. Umantyi mnye phaya oko wayene problem ngexesha le-COVID i-cases zethu, so as movie. So sinalo ngxaki phaa kwi-community yethu. Siyabuza ke ngoku kokuba singancedakala njani phaa ukuhlangulwa kulaa case. I-case ingena ngolesibini, i-court ingena ngolesibini qha. Then zipakile ke ngoku i-case kuxoxwa ezangelaa xesha le-COVID. Kube kune-cases ze-GBV ezenzekayo ngokwangoku. So sinalo ngxaki. Okwesibini, sibe nengxaki ye-perpetrators esivela sibone zikhona in the community. Zingakange zibe kuhanjwa amajelo angendlela i-processes. Sinalo ngxaki.
Mama.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Annelisa Jezile from Masimanyane. I think now I'm stuck between asking a question and having a comment. So can you please allow me?
Do them both.
Going back to Pillar 5, I think we missed so much important notice and points that we needed to another, especially when it comes to load shedding. How does load shedding contribute to the increase in cases of gender-based violence? Because we know that these cases are mostly happening during the lights when they are off, and people are getting robbed when the lights are off. Secondly, the issue of street lights in the BCM. How do we make sure that we address that? How does the municipality account to that? Because we know that we do have these street lights, but these street lights are almost like something that is not there because they are off. So how does the municipality account that and making sure that people, young children, women are also safe when it comes to these cities? And thirdly, the issue
last
of
one.
the safety audits. We did speak about safety audits and make sure that the communities are conducting safety audits. And also we did ask that police visibility in those safety audits, because we believe that those communities, we do have abandoned houses where people get raped, get marked, and also can be victims of femicide. Please, the Department of SAPS, can they also make sure that they make themselves visible when it comes to safety audits? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now, kusecangwa kubuye uze nayo ke ngosiyoqala phaka kwi-comments.
Okay.
1 2 akhanda uphakamise wena.
Okay. My name is Olelo Apona from Masimanyane. I would like to comment on Pillar 5. Pillar 5 also addresses the issue of child maintenance, because currently in South Africa, 60% of children have absent fathers. This leaves the responsibility of physical, emotional, and financial care of children to the mothers. But now our issue is now when they want to apply for maintenance, they turn around and there's a backlog as well. So my suggestion was that maybe there need to be more staff, more maintenance officers as well, to actually address the issue of backlog, because now children do not get support because sometimes fathers refuse to support their children because the relationship has ended. So can you please just look at that, looking at the backlog?
Thank you. Asize ngapha ke bhuti. Nanto emfondini. Comments, and your comments is very strict. Oh, yawathanda amehlo la.
Thank you very much. Good morning again. Mamufanta, my comment is based on Pillar 3. When our reporter was reporting the hate crimes directed
Masipithuba
to
kaloku,
Putin,
masipithuba. Give her a chance, please.
I wanted to stress out and put emphasis on the hate crimes directed to the LGBTI members. Let us put emphasis on that. Yes, Department of South African Police Services have done much in sensitizing their members on how to deal and open cases of members of the LGBTI community. How I'd like also all government stakeholders to put emphasis on sensitization on the LGBTIQI members. Enkosi kakhulu.
Thank you. Dingo abongile bodi, disuke PCM. Firstly, dicela u appreciator. Mine is on the positive. Dicela u appreciator the presentation ka Mr. Matemba. It was yesterday. I think it spoke to the purpose of the day. Okay, I'll try to be quick, Gemamzo. Secondly, I would just like to suggest to particularly community members to just refrain from making the issue a GBVF a problem ka government only. I think the problem that affects all of us, and the song gets in a responsibility, your landelela, no kukatalela the victims. I'm not gonna dwell much on that. I'm very bendi eager kakhulu when I decided I'm going to attend the summit. I was eager to hear on the economic empowerment for women. I think the plan and already what has been done, it's impeccable. And then Difuna, just to ukunazisa, as I said, Vana, I'm on the positive. Zikona NPCs that understand the vision that Upremia has, the province, Eastern Cape. Pakwa Ward 48, Mtanzane, there's an NPC that is, as we speak now, it's busy training abantu nge-skills artificial intelligence ne-technology. Akudlalwa ke phamama. generated. We're talking about microwaves ezingazuplagwa embaneni. We're talking about izinto that are basically going to solve problems as it needs.
Thank you.
And just on the
Thank
last
you.
note, 60% of those people
Thank
that are
you.
being trained are women,
you.
10%
And you
are
didn't
disabled.
to plan your
Enkosi.
comments. You didn't plan your comments. Mama,
Molweni, nithetha nomama uGwayi, ongu-chairperson we-Eastern Cape Rural Women, and also the member of Amathole Rapid Response Team. Eyethu i-comment singomama basezilalini. Sithi, makungabe kwatyala amapolisa xa uhambe wayobanjwa umyeni wakho ubuthe ubethiwe. Sabe thina besibeke impempe ngenxa yoba sisiva into yoba umfazi uyabethwa apha next door. The next thing ngoku wena esawufika amapolisa uthethe enye into. The next thing amapolisa ayokoyika ukubamba ngoba akuyimbamba umyeni wakho ngoba wena uzayovula icase othi khange ndimmangalele umyeni wami. That is nonsense. I'm sorry to use that. Okusalayo ubethiwe. There is an offense that has been committed, which is assault. Makudilishwane into emayisuke yenzeke. Lo mfazi uthi le ndoda mayingabanjwa. She must also be arrested for it defeating of ends of justice. Because now, Tina, sikwi-state, sikwi-position embi, sibalelwa kwi-statistic esiphezulu sokubulawa kwabantu abangomama. Ahukwe umntana apha eSouthern Wood, yi-boyfriend imbetha. The next thing kuzawuthiwa nguye funeka ayovula icase. What about this thing eyenzekileyo? Andibona ngebethwa yenyusilwa ke sithwani. Ade omnye azifote azifake ku-Facebook ba ubethwa yile ndoda. The next thing xa kufika amapolisa mangabanjwa mbambeni and there's no case.
Thank you.
Andanoba ndiyabonakala kweli cala.
Thank you. Again.
Okay. All right. Manibulele mphathiswa, ndiyaqonda ubana kudala kuthethwa ndiyabona into yobana kuthetha abantu basetyhini bodwa. Igama lam ndinguKing Mfundisi, ndinguwakutsolo kodwa ke ngoku ndisuke kuMngane FM. The reason why ndi-insist into yobana nale comment yam mayingashiyeki it's because ndiyabona into yobana aside siyapho kuvele khona ithole. Now ndixolele ukusebenzisa le term because andingakabi nankosikazi but ndifuna le context ivakale. I feel like kwezi programs siyala umfazi into yokubana angayibuzi indoda ibilelaphi. Kodwa indoda siyiyala into yobana ixelele unkosikazi bayizobuya. Andanoba ndiyivani. Ezi programs zi-designed into yokubana si-equip, si-empowerishe abantu basetyhini yethi asiye emadodeni sithethe nawo. Zinqabile ii-programs apho ezilalini ezimbizweni kubizwa amadoda elali bengawo odwa bangabikho mama. Kubuza into yokubana umbethela ntoni.
Enkosi.
Yintoni le nto ikwenza into yokubana like ungevani nonkosikazi wakho. Kuyafuneka into yobana nezi programs namadoda abe involved because bona ngoku bangaphandle yethi si-empowerisha isayidi eli-1 asiyi kwaba benza ububi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enkosi bhuti. Izana lo mic ke sisi ndimkile kweli cala ndingapha ngoku. Mayisi mic. Nika umama lo belapha.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Buyisi Wengala. I'm from the Prosecuting Authority, the Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit. And I have questions towards Pillar 4. From the rapporteur, what they told us was that they have some complaints regarding the Tutuzela care centers, how they are working, and who is accountable. Secondly, they said the NPA has set legislation about Tutuzela care centers. My question is which legislation? Because NPA does not necessarily make legislation, we comment on legislation, and we do not have legislation on Tutuzela care centers. And the third one is that they said no roles are clear, as to who does what at the Tutuzela Care Centers. We have protocols for all Tutuzela Care Centers, and the protocols set out the responsibilities of each stakeholder and each role player, and who is accountable, how, when, and to whom. And yes, we agree with the fact that sometimes the challenges that DOH faces, they do sometimes have a negative effect or a negative efficacy on Tutuzela Care Centers. However, with the working of the TCCs, I think it's very clear that the NPA is the lead department, the DOH houses the Tutuzela Care Centers, and we work together in a multidisciplinary manner. We also have an MOU with DSD that provides us with social workers, and they fund the NGOs that provide lay counselors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you to everybody. My comment is simple. I just want to add on to what he had talked about in terms of strengthening the family unit. My addition to that is that a family unit is situated in the community, and a child does not just learn from the family. A child learns from everywhere, from television, from the neighbors, from everyone else. So it's the whole community that needs to be strengthened in that regard in terms of eradicating gender-based violence. And the other thing that I want to add on is employability of the youth. I work for Nelson Mandela University. I'm director of research there. We have students who do not want to take opportunity of looking for employment for themselves. Within the system, we tell them to say, you need to become, to be on a mentorship program where you join a company and they train you there, and within that setting there, you find an opportunity of being employed. They don't want to do it. They won't do it. Therefore, they'll graduate and have the degree, and they have never attempted to write a CV, and they have never attempted to look for a job. And then it looks like there is such, we have got people with degrees who are sitting without employment. Meanwhile, those people are not taking initiative to look for jobs. Because there are jobs in the newspapers every day where they advertise for people to apply for jobs, and they don't. Thank you.
Thank you. The last one. The last one. And then go siya break up for tea.
Thank you, Chairperson. Mine is very short. It's just to put an emphasis, maybe to get accountability, so that Oxon's response mane impendulo. When victim empowerment units within the police stations that were established years back, but the most abuse happens within the police stations. Soon after those victim empowerment units were actually implemented, we have seen a lot of kwadutshulwa umama eyovula icase evulela umyeni wakhe wafika lo myeni wambulalela apha police station, meaning that akazange athathwe ayofakwa in that particular place of safety. We were there sonke mama nani women's caucus sijikeleza supporter as victim to centers together neTutuzelas on that particular year. I can't remember which phase was it, but where I'm getting at where I'm getting at is that they don't exist. Stella impendulo on that. Where are they? Because umuntu orechiweyo, umuntu ohlukunyeziweyo noba indoda noba ngumfazi xa efika police station attendwa apha e-front desk, abulawelwe apha e-front desk, yonke into yenzelwe apha e-front desk, aphume elimele ehoyo apha e-front desk. So siyacela iphinde i-purpose yazo ibe icace izenze lento zaziyenzelwe yona. Enkosi kakhulu.
Thank you. Are you going to answer? We are worried that erodes, it is not here. We are worried. Nelson Mandela and Forte, please, can you check going forward, roads. We're worried, roads, there's a culture of rape, roads. And if it's not here, we are worried about that. I've got a child who's in China now who ran away because he was gang raped about 7 men, roads. So we're worried that ingata isinayo this gender desk, roads. And we need this second in a man, with universities, at least even nomnyango ovulekayo pa roads. Again, what we want to add, Lendo yet toll-free number on reporting GBV, not 911. Just to report, even commission that I need. I remember it assisted Ifan Tonder Bridge, then the toll-free number, where abantu bebes toba bes bulalapa. Ever since that toll-free, on the phone pan the toll-free number, so that ababoyikayo kuyo reporter bangene kula number umuntu azenzele abe phone yakhe as a speed dial. Thank you. Can we go for tea? It's just 50 minutes and we're coming back. Thank you.